There it is, kids. If you have the ability to read the English language, or if you have the ability to read any other language, you can kind of decipher what another language might be saying, or maybe you're knowledgeable about roots and structures and consonants. If any of the above apply to you, you can see that this is a piece of paper that says Gay Cowboys in Bondage. We're not gay, but the music is. And that can really only mean one thing. I mean, it could mean a bunch of things, but in reality, it only means one thing. And that means that you, lucky viewer, are tuned into the most recent, the newest, the hearest, the nowest, the wowest Malcolm Tent Shoot interview. Yes, indeedy do. I like to gather people up and sit them in the hot seat and grill them about their lives and their careers in this very strange thing that we call the music business. And today I have not part one, but part two of an epic talk with a guy named Mike Lesser, former lead singer of South Florida's great, and that could be G-R-A-T-E, it could be G-R-E-A-T, however you want to spell it, however you want to live it, South Florida's great 1980s punk rock hardcore band, the Gay Cowboys in Bondage. Welcome, Mike.
Good to be here, Malcolm. As always, you make me embarrassed by your compliments. As somebody who was a tremendous wanter to have everything and anything that Broken Talent made, and thought equally that you guys were taking what we started and putting a much better finish to it. Just an awesome band, and I often said, "My God Can Beat Up Your God" was such a great song. I wish I had wrote.
Well, that means we have a pretty good mutual envy society going here, because I've gone on record a number of times saying that the Gay Cowboys in Bondage, along with Morbid Opera, were the two bands that we kind of wished we were. So we were all envious of each other. Now here we are, the better part of 40 years later, talking about it. And of course, there's a reason for these things. We do, even though you're in the great country of Canada and I'm here in the US of A, I think each of our economies are basically capital driven. And what drives a capitalist economy? The product. The product is the motivator. And the motivator for getting you in the hot seat and talking about the great music from the South Florida scene of the 80s is a project that has me extremely excited as a music fanboy and as an historian and as somebody who loved the Gay Cowboys in Bondage. Yes, I teased it at the very beginning, but now I'm going to tell everybody about it. The first ever official reissue on cassette of the Gay Cowboys in Bondage, We're Not Gay, But the Music Is, along with the Owen Marshmallow Strikes Again 7-inch and a fistful of bonus cuts. I have also reissued it on, look at that, a CD. If people remember CDs, oh my God. It's happening. It's now. It is here. It's on my label, TPOS. We're going to get the commercial out of the way before we dive into the topic at hand. TPOS, which you can find on Discogs, eBay, and Bandcamp. If you want you some Gay Cowboys in Bondage, either as a digital download or physical media, we can do it. So I want to thank you, Mike, again for allowing me to do this, because this Gay Cowboys catalog, small but very impressive and very important. And I would like to talk to you for the second time about the South Florida scene and some of the bands that you played with, and just like general impressions of like some of the personalities involved, because there were a lot of personalities in South Florida.
There sure was. And our Z, as you put it, first off, let me tell you, I noticed you had the very first promotional hand-drawn poster with the Gay Cowboy selling the and Marshmallow or the cassette, one or the other.
Yeah, that would
I
be
don't.
the CD artwork that.
You're putting more effort in artwork than we did in our cassette for sure. There was the Mountain Dew rules side and the Euroween side. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't use the word envious. It was really something how no matter what it was, rockabilly, all country, garage, punk, noise, electronic, it actually was supportive. Everybody supported everyone. Nobody dissed anyone. Nobody put any problems to anyone. They Shelter or whoever else could put a very eclectic night together, and each band had its fans, and they seemed to stay and enjoy the rest of the bands. And we were very fortunate in that because we weren't New York, we weren't Chicago, we weren't LA, and people would come down spring break or summer, and they would come to our shows. They would introduce themselves. Oh, I'm on a small punk radio show in Long Island, New York, or I have a show in, I saw an address in Connecticut, you know, and they'd say, we'd like to buy your cassette, we'd like to buy your record, and we're gonna play a song or two, or, you know, they come down from spring break and they buy a whole bunch of records to bring back to their friends and stuff. And, but all in all, we were still South Florida, you know, if we weren't going to support ourselves, there wasn't really this big outer world to come and support us or even know who we were or where we were. Yeah, even the big names, if they couldn't get Orlando and Palm Beach and make it worth their while, they're not going to travel 9 hours to come down. So we were raised on the first generation of local bands, then we became the next generation, and I'm sure we influenced the ones after us.
Yeah, no doubt. And the way you describe it is really exactly the way that I remember it. I mean, the basic thing was if you were a local band and you were into local bands, you just went to go see the local bands. And it didn't matter what the so-called genre was. And like you just mentioned some of the great names like Larry Joe Miller and the Rockabilly Rockets, you know.
Right.
For electronic music, you had the Front. There was any number of punk and hardcore bands.
I went to high school with a kid who was bass player in Rolling Pins, and then I think he went on to be in Radio Berlin or Futurist. You know, we played with everyone. I mean, we even played with you guys at the Tony's thing at the War Memorial, the Punk Fest.
Oh, the infamous Tropical Depression show at the at Fireman's Hall and
I remember you guys playing before us, and I was like, oh man, I can't be tired. I can't be. I need to drum up the best show ever, because those guys just raised the bar, you know. And but yeah, it was, for the most part, at least I could say, when I first got into a band that was playing out, not just in garages and house parties, till I played the last band that was able to do that. Very, very supportive. Very, very, you know, it encouraged us that we shouldn't be afraid to try anything we wrote or anything we want to perform, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and the point you made earlier was completely salient because it was just us. We didn't have the support system of a big city or, you know, even a big state. It was just the South Florida scene stuck way down there at the end of that peninsula. So just by default, we had to support each other. So what were some of the bands that really stick out in your mind that you got to share the stage with in the Gay Cowboys?
Well, the Minutemen, of course, was incredible. I mean, Pete and myself were just fans beyond fans, owned everything and so on. And Pete had met D Boone when he was out in California, and the stories he told me about him. And when they came down, I don't remember if I asked Shelter, or I think Shelter just wanted to, quote unquote, in his mind, put his best foot forward because they were coming and have us open. He had like another band open for HR, but HR never showed up. So I'm glad we didn't take that show. And I was so nervous. Like, I don't even know if it was the best show ever, because I just kept looking over and seeing Mike Watt watching us. And I was just like, for the first time in my life, just shaking, besides being crazy, I was shaking crazy. And a funny story about Mike Watt, what a great guy he is. Fast forward, and my wife and I are living in Philadelphia for her college. It's dead of winter, and maybe we had just an hour together in conversation. I'm sitting on a step outside the venue to go see Fire Hose and a local band opening for them. Dead of winter, got a winter jacket on with the hood and everything. Sitting there talking to Lori, and he walks by, because in those days, they carried their own stuff in the club, carrying his bass guitar in its case, takes 2 steps past me, turns around, and he says, "Milo?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he says, "It's you, yeah," and starts talking to me. And that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, so that would be my number one favorite. Morbid Opera. Anytime we played with Morbid Opera, I loved it. Libby and Lisa just were friends of mine, and I loved that band, and it just was so great. We played a lot of warehouses with parties with the Essentials, and seeing them loosen up in a warehouse is just a lot of fun, different than when they would play out live in a club.
See, now I'm really envious because I never got to see the Essentials live. I mean, when you say they were like looser in a warehouse sort of setting versus a club, I mean, how would you describe the different approach that they had to a warehouse gig as opposed to a club gig?
Well, one, no money on the table.
Right.
And 2, because we were clowning around and having fun most of the day, and then around the nighttime, we put the word out to some people, "Hey, we're all going to perform tonight, come to the warehouse." The only actual real true we put our foot in it and we better make it happen was just the Halloweeny party at our warehouse. And I went to Morbid Opera, and they said, "We love to play," because that's the way it was. Standstill Dance Band, we love to play. And it was just going to be Morbid Opera and Standstill and us. And I walk into open, and I see Eddie O'Brien sitting on the famous open couch. And I thought to myself, oh yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I said, "Eddie, we're having a warehouse party. It's right off of I-95, Broward Boulevard. So if you're coming from Miami, it's no big deal. You don't have to drive west or anything." I said, "I want to eat I love to eat. You're my favorite band. I want you to play this warehouse party for the Halloween." And he's like, "No, no, no." And I looked at him, I said, "I am going to jump on you and continue jumping on you and slamming into you until you say yes." And Leslie was at the counter just hysterical laughing as I kept going, "Will you play now? Will you play now? Will you play now? Will you play now?" And finally he said he would. But he said, we need to get paid something because we're coming from Miami. Hence, I think it was $2 for people. And we had to put out flyers, and we had about 30 people maybe that showed up, which was incredible too. And I'm so glad the police didn't shut us down. And so, yeah, so we put around the hat and gave beer money to the eat. But so that too, that night, other than that, you know, we played with a lot of bands, and they just so were appreciative, you know, that we played with them. They couldn't understand sometimes why we would rather them headline and we would play before them. But then again, we're just all local bands. And we wanted to get home at a decent hour because we lived up in Broward.
It didn't really matter too much. I mean, there were certain bands that were, I think, bigger than others, but we really all were kind of about the same fish in the same size pond, I would venture to say. And I think a lot of it really was just a matter of mutual respect that one band would have for another, that would put one band on top and another band underneath them.
Yeah, that used to bug me, what your band's on top because your band has a 45, or your band was on LRN or something like that. But I kind of rejected that. Everybody writes something, creates something, it needs to be respected. Don't be critical about it. But instead appreciate that we're creating more scene. You know, the more bands, the better. I understood that our name was unusual. I understood that when we got on stage, we really had fun and we were crazy on stage, hyper. And I understand that I didn't set out to write songs that were just, hey, gay, shmay, may, shanae, you know, I love the dove, my betrothed, but actually put some intelligence into finding a good lyric to write, you know, sometimes funny, sometimes more serious.
You know, that is actually something I wanted to point out, which I never really, like, I always kind of knew, but never really thought about. Gay Cowboys songs, actually, you guys tacked a lot of serious subject matter. You know, it was cloaked in this approach of silliness, but you were writing about real stuff. And I think that's kind of cool how you kind of slipped that in. It was kind of subversive.
I didn't want to be a preacher. I didn't want to be oi, 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 you know, rah, rah, rah. I wanted, you know, it's like, probably like More Bruises is the most serious of serious songs I wrote. And that song, when I sang it, I would make myself angry as I sang the words that I wrote, because, you know, I was always part of a community, and I volunteered one day, you know, at a shelter. And I saw these poor kids and victims of their own family. I didn't talk to them because we're told not to, you know, we're just there. It was like a field day and we're just there to just sort of facilitate. But when I got home, man, I wrote that song and I was just coming out of me, you know. But otherwise, yeah, it'd be big fat bologna sandwich. It's not about a bologna sandwich. It was about my supervisor, who was about 350 pounds, comes up on a roof trying to get through a little hatch in the roof and gets stuck, yelling at me. I'm not getting anything done, but he has no idea that I had to move like a half a day of materials that were in my way to get something done. And he's trying to unstuck himself, get down the staircase of this roof hatch, you know. I'm like, God, fucking big fat bologna sandwich, you know. And then I'm like, I'm not going to get any work done. Where's a piece of paper? And I wrote it on a 2x4. You know,
Oh man,
it's a, you know, it's a employee rant song, but of course it's big fat bologna sandwich, so people think it's humorous.
Right. On the lyric sheet for the Owen Marshmallow Strikes Again record, which is of course on the cassette and CD I did, you've got the lyrics to More Bruises, and they're pretty heavy lyrics, but at the end it says, "Sing along, Sam." So you've got this sort of like sugar coating to the bitter pill.
Yeah, well, it says sing along, Sam.
Yeah, at the end of the lyrics. In fact, I do have,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, as part of the show and tell, like with the CD and the cassette, unfortunately, there's not enough room in the packaging to print
Yeah,
lyrics, but I do have the original lyric sheet here.
right. With us playing our very first show at the Piper High School Battle of the Bands.
Yes, that is the photo on the lyric insert. If people want to see that from the
Yes,
from the high school yearbook.
getting halfway through domestic battlefield before three jocks in front tackle me, and one punches me in the chest. So of course I did anything like any normal person defends himself. I groined him big time. And got him off, but the school administration did not understand why we didn't sound like Rush when we promised to be a Rush tribute band, and promptly kicked us out. Needless to say, we did not win.
Yeah, it's I don't know if we talked about the fact that the precursor to Broken Talent, we also made our world debut at a high school talent show. And oddly enough, we went over pretty good. I don't know why or how, but they didn't run us out of the place and they seemed to like it.
Funny enough, after Owen was out, we were approached by some of the kids in the fun week of Piper High School in June, and we actually did an auditorium concert one evening.
As
They had a dance. Yeah, the Gay Cowboys in Bondage. Yeah, I was trying out a friend had lent me, because he said, "You're always taping up the microphone because you keep breaking them from all your hijinks." A wireless system. And I remember having to explain to some 15-year-old that you're on the same wavelength of this microphone. You have to change your wavelength. And he says, but we need to communicate. And I said, but your school is actually paying us to play this thing. And we were just told not to curse. So we could have played Big Fat Bologna Sandwich and Just May Follow. But otherwise, it was a pretty good show.
Wow, how did the kids react?
High school kids loved us. I was surprised how many kids had. I'll tell you a funny story. I was in construction, air conditioning, welding, sheet metal. And we were up in Palm Beach County, working on Spanish River High School. And a section that was being redone, like a library and stuff, was sort of chain linked off, but it was right next to the actual high school. And weekend before, at a warehouse party or somewhere we played, Fonzie's nephews played, these two guys, with their song, "I'm a kangaroo, hop, 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 stop." Funny as anything. All of a sudden, I started hearing, "Gay Cowboys in Bondage, Milo, Gay Cowboys in Bondage." And I look off like the side of my shoulder, and it's Fonzie's nephews. I'm like, oh crap. Great, I'm on my job with these construction workers, and my real macho alpha male, Pablo, he's like, what are they saying? Do you hear what they're saying? I said, I don't know. They're yelling at one of their friends or something. Let's just get back to work, man. Let's get back to work. Nobody knew I was in bands or anything, I didn't need that headache or that. So, but yeah, and oddly enough, we never played Palm Beach. We were supposed to play Singer Island, and something happened and we never played.
Well, that anecdote you just told about Fonzie's nephews, seeing you on the job site, that underlines a very real hazard of living in South Florida. You know, by having somebody yell "Gay Cowboy in Bondage" at you, you were being put at risk, like literally being put at risk by something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I guess. I mean, oddly enough, no one ever waited outside a club to harm us or to do anything to us. We never got any of that kind of activity. I do remember one time the club Backstreets on Broward actually wanted us to play. They had heard the name, but when I told the guy about our music and our songs and what we do, he said, "Oh, that's okay. No, thank you." He thought we were a country band or something. I said, "No, no." And we have songs like "Gay" and, you know, "Cowboys Are Gay."
Right, which was all, you know, commentary. You know, it wasn't, you know.
It was, yeah, tongue in cheek.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is the essence of punk rock. You know, you're trying to make a point, but as you just said earlier, without preaching necessarily.
Right. So, like, for example, reggae, you know, the pretext of it is about going to date a Jamaican girl. At one time, my wife, before I met my wife and started dating her, dated a Jamaican girl. And the pretext of, like, they would say, you know, very didn't like the fact that there was the mix and all that stuff. But I also worked on a construction site, and at the time, it's not a stereotype of people, but just these two individuals were Jamaican, and they were very homophobic, throwing gay slurs everywhere. And so where do I go with it? Jimmy, you know, Peter Tosh, my tush, you know, you can kiss my burning spear. And that's reggae, but you're also hearing, you know, the story of, you know, their parents chased me away and called me gay, you know. But yeah, so a lot of things that you heard were because it was just so ridiculous that you had to ridicule it. And the best way to do it is to throw it back. Like, so what would you do if you found out that all your reggae stars were gay? You know, all of a sudden, would they be, you would hate them or you would still love them?
Right, right. See, that's interesting. You know, what I'm hearing now, so far, every lyric of the Gay Cowboys that we've talked about has been based on personal, real life experience.
Oh, yeah. Domestic battlefield, people say, oh, your mom and dad must have whatever, whatever. No, I mean, I was raised, but it was this couple that were the next building from my apartment and down that just literally were wailing on each other 24 hours a day with their windows open. And I hear them screaming and screaming. And one day I'm just sitting there and I'm like, man, I have my very own domestic battlefield. And bang, grab a guitar and write that song.
That's it. One
GD, GD, you know,
yeah.
write the song. And again, how do I write it? I don't want to write, oh, he slugged her and she slugged him. No, it's, you know, I wish I could tape the verbal assaults. It's all slander. I tried to use my vocabulary. I tried to, with a high school diploma, sound collegiate. Write a decent lyric. You know, I always felt lyrics were the most important thing. Chords are just put together, but lyrics really come from your head, you know, not your influence.
Right, right. Well,
And that's what I like about your songs, sir, the Malcolm Tent songs. You know, I listen to them and I say, the lyrics stand, and then the rest is just, you know, your influence in music or how you feel to partner it.
you know, it is true. I mean, you know, when you say that about my stuff, that's when my solo acoustic stuff, that is absolutely the way I write songs. It's always the lyrics first, or maybe a catchy riff. But a lot of times when I play, when I'll do a live concert, I actually mute the guitar down to where you can barely hear it. It's all about the delivery and the message. And
I was writing hardcore on an old beat up acoustic guitar because Pete was playing my guitar, my Les Paul. When you see the pictures of Pete with the Sunburst Les Paul, that was mine. Royce Les Paul, not a Gibson. But and so like Just May Follow and Big Fat Bologna Sandwich and you know, all those songs, Illness, they were all written on an acoustic guitar, pretty much, because I didn't have an electric. Pete was playing it.
right, right, which proves that a good song is a good song. It doesn't matter what you play on.
Yeah, yeah, very true.
And I was always impressed by the sheer musicianship of you guys. And we talked a little bit about Eddie Nothing and his bass playing. When you look at a song like Big Fat Bologna Sandwich and you listen to the guitar part and the bass part, they're really playing kind of against each other, and it creates this whole effect that's very complex and sort of interlocking. I don't think Eddie really ever got the credit he deserved for being a really, really good bass player.
I agree. Eddie was amazing bass player, and Eddie also, when we had a bigger stage, really was as crazy as I could get on stage. You know, I just got so excited by the bass and the drum. You know, I would come into practice and I'd say, okay guys, I wrote this song, and play it out for them. Here's the chords. I would throw in a little lead or something, but I knew automatically Pete was going to invest a much better lead into it. You know, there was no ego. Like Pete wrote Funny Red Mustache Kool-Aid, but I said to him, we can't just have a pure pop song. We have to have some rough edge in it. So when I said to him, I'd like to substitute I'll drink that sugar until I'm dead, I said, it'd be so much cooler if we said, I'll drink those cyclamates until I'm dead. And there wasn't ego, like, it's my song and I hardly get to add a song because you do all the writing and then bring it to us. No, it was, oh, that's so cool, Milo. Yeah, definitely, we should do cyclamates. It just sounds so cool, like until I'm dead, those cyclamates. Yeah, it was really a mutual respect, and considering the talent of the other three, to give me that respect really made me feel good and comfortable. I always felt like before I was in Cowboys that being a lead singer was just the lamest part of the band, and that you're replaceable and whatever. And so, of course, writing I felt was the way, but then they always made me feel, no, every piece of our band is equally important. So when I would bring the song, Eddie, you're right, would say, I'm going to play this on it with the bass. And Pete would say, like in one song, we should stop it here, let Eddie do some runs, or let Mike Ravenous, Gangrene, do some drumming, and then come back. It really was great. It was a great effort that nobody was selfish about what they created. No one was afraid that someone would think less of you because someone else worked on it. It was very, very diplomatic, believe it or not. And I think that's why we got along to do things. So when Pete said, I want to do a record, we were like, okay, let's do it, because we knew it would be good, because we knew together the four of us would have fun while doing it.
Right, right. And
I know that was winded, and I apologize.
that's why we're here. We want to hear the stories and we want to hear the histories, and you've got the best perspective. So as Led Zeppelin would say, ramble on. Now, that begs a question I never really thought about. And well, here comes a technical difficulty. The world famous Harry the cat is making an appearance now on camera. As he
Poor
does.
Harry.
Poor Harry. People can see his beat up little old face. He is normally the boss of the block, but apparently there's another alpha male in the neighborhood, and old Harry got a face full of claw. Claw may follow, I suppose. So here's Harry. He's interrupting us, and now I'm going to unceremoniously cast him aside so we can continue talking to the main event, Mike Lesser here. Gay Cowboys in Bondage, Owen Marshmallow Strikes Again has 6 songs. Did you guys have those 6 songs in mind before you even went into the studio, or did you guys record more and just choose those? How did that work?
Okay. The cassette, as you'll see, I sent you that warehouse and you the tape. We had AOR, Cups in My Hand, Cheddar Cheese Party, and I think that was it. And a song called James is Lame, which I later took that music and made it better to write Big Fat Bologna Sandwich. But by the time we got to the EP, we had been playing those songs live and practicing them, and we had it all set up. Crime and Violence was on the cassette live, was a song that I wrote with a good friend of mine, awesome friend of mine, love her like a sister, Lori Kersey, for a different band we were in. And so that one was there also. And so the EP, we were, boy, the most that we ever could be. Nothing was written in the studio while we were there or off the cuff. Everything was practice and precision. So we were good with it, you know. And surprisingly, which was shocking us all because Pete produced it. We originally had Mickey, a friend of ours, but he had some conflict of scheduling. So Pete wanted to produce, and that was fine with Dave Camp, and Hal was still our engineer, Hal Spector. The song Crime and Violence wasn't supposed to be on the 6 songs. It was a song called No Neighbor, which I think I gave you a practice tape, and it's on that. It's one of the unreleased songs.
Right.
I love No Neighbor. I mean, I had the most asinine neighbor, and I loved writing that song about her and her husband. And I just wanted it to be on the vinyl, and I was so excited. And then the master is done, and he gives me the setup as we're going to Alpha Records with the lacquer, which I showed you on the last party interview, to get the metal done to press. And he says, "Oh, and this is the order of the songs, so we can get the pressing, you know, the printing done. Eddie can make the labels hand drawn." And I asked him, I said, "Crime and Violence, why? I mean, I like the song, but we already put it out there. Aren't we supposed to put new stuff?" And Pete, being I won't say it was ego, it was perfectionist. Pete was a perfectionist. Didn't like his solo and wanted a better solo out there. Like Pete felt, I put my name on this, then I want the best I can do for my name. And so he put it on. I love the song. It's fun. I was good with it, but I'm so happy you put No Neighbor on this new project because I always wanted it to be heard by people.
Right, and that's a perfect lead in to talk about a reunion show. I don't know if you want to get into that in much detail, but you guys played a show in 1996.
Yeah, I was about to become a dad for the first time, my son, and that's the only reason I agreed to do it. I basically was, just for this stuff that we're doing now, I went into boxes I haven't looked into for 30 years or so. I mean, it happened and it's good, but you know, you move on. What good does it do you? Oh, you know, I was in a band. Oh, that's nice, big deal. So everyone's in a band, right? And I thought, well, it's my last chance before fatherhood and everything changes. Eddie was in Tampa. Mike hadn't really played drums for a long time. So we did rented, I think L7 or some place in Deerfield, the recording studio and rehearsal space. We rented that rehearsal space. And we were doing it with a guy who played later in Johnny Tonight as a guitar. He played bass. And, you know, nobody like saw it as a great opportunity, like the world was waiting for us to return or something. As a matter of fact, it was 15 years later, you know. But we had fun. We were joking and laughing and just hysterical, you know, laughing and making jokes. I won't get into why, but there was this joke, push the green button, which was just breaking us up tremendously. And we get to go to do the show. Eddie has the rehearsal tape. We mailed it to him. He was playing along with it. And unbeknownst to me, Pete was recording it, video recording, and he wanted to try again to reissue the Cowboys. And it just, you know, when business gets involved in music, when you're not looking for it to be a business, you know, Tim played your kitchen. I wish him all the success, and I hope he gets to come to Vancouver. You get to come to Vancouver, you know, and I understand that it's got some finances to it and so on. But for us, we were a local band that just was so happy to play out and have fun. And what better way to spend a night or a weekend playing music to people? And so that's all we wanted to do, was not have pressures and the whole thing. And no one knew who we were. They were all there to see all the kids and all the people who were at Churchill's that night to see these other two bands. We were the first opening one. There's probably 15 people who knew who we were and 15 people who counted anyway. So it didn't matter. It was one person we played. But when it's a one-off and you have so much else go on in your life, you're going to become a dad and you're going to, and so on. I don't think it really had to happen. I don't think that reunion was, Pete had big plans, and Pete, of course, was upset because they didn't amount to the quality and to the platitudes of his big band dreams. And that's not a diss on Pete at all. I love Pete. I miss him dearly. But it's that I feel Pete got cheated in life. He didn't have the best looks. He was stuck in South Florida. But Pete is the most incredible musician I ever met. Pete could pick up any instrument of any genre of instrument, never see it before, and just play it. A saxophone, a banjo, drums, guitar, bass, piano, a clarinet. I mean, he was incredible. So there was that wow, we feel bad now because we should have realized how important it was. So that reunion happened, but you know, some things were better not to happen.
Right. Many bands could learn a lesson from that. Sometimes you have to just kind of let the legacy be what it
Yeah,
was. But the good thing is we got that recording of No Neighbor is a Good Neighbor, which we are now,
exactly.
we got it reissued now for the first time ever. It's it's a great tune. It's a great recording. I'm very happy to have it.
Yeah, and Captain Crunch, I think you have also.
Yep, we got a few unreleased songs, some of the very earliest things that you and Mr. Ravenous Gangrene ever did together, recorded in his
Right.
trailer home, I think is what you said.
Yeah, yeah. I had written Cowboys Are Gay as a hardcore, like, like at the end, it gets kind of hardcore. And I didn't know how to play a country guitar. And so I was at Mike at his trailer and I said, Ravenous, we have to have this song, but I want it to like be country and then flip to hardcore, like, and yeah, so we wrote that. And then he said, what else you got? And I said, I like the idea of you writing the music. This is a switch. Let me just share these lyrics. And of course, it was the Quincy song. Nothing was out of bounds, man.
Yeah. And Quincy and punk rock, they went hand in hand in the 1980s. And if anybody out there is a victim of the generation gap and doesn't understand, go onto YouTube or whatever, look up Quincy punk rock episode. And
right.
It will all be explained.
Exactly. Right. And that's when I had ode to Quincy. Like if he acknowledged punk rock should acknowledge him. Exactly. So, and yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we hung out together and we were friends, and Eddie and I, we used to Saturday mornings we would be in front watching Marvel cartoons.
Yeah.
It so, but then the Cowboys ended, and friends are friends, and just like Cowboys started because of friends. I was in a band called Ted Gottfried's We're Not Psychedelic, and that was friends too. It was a different bunch of people. Eddie came along for the ride, and Hal Specter, who was later Boise and Moss, and a guy named Dave. Back then he was Diamond Dave Fun, playing drums. And we were not trying to be punk rock. We were trying to be Dada artists, avant-garde, and sort of be different. Yeah. Okay, one punk rock song, Why Does My Breath Smell Like Fruity Pebbles? But other than that, it was like, just crazy stuff. And during the middle of it, I would put down my guitar and play the bass, and someone else would play guitar. We'd do a cover song and I play drums, and we'd go to Churchill's, and it was great. And then it evolved into another generation, and Pete joined, and we had even more fun with it. And it wasn't putting out records or tapes, and we with the opening band, and 6 people were there or 12 people were there. It was nice. It was no, first time Pete never worried about what it was for the business of it or for the anything. It was, I think he enjoyed that so much too. It was just really good. Ted Gottfried's We're Not Psychedelic. And then that was it. I made my exit from the scene.
Right
I
on.
left quietly in the night with my suitcase and no debts owed.
Which is an enviable position to be in, for sure.
Yeah.
I just got to ask, the name of the band, Ted Gottfried's We're Not Psychedelic. Now, for those who don't know, Ted Gottfried was the co-owner of Open Books and Records. in South Florida, one of the great record stores of all time. So Ted had nothing to do with this band?
No, we pilfered his name.
That is so punk rock, it's ridiculous.
Yes, yes. I don't think Leslie was ever jealous.
Probably not. Leslie being the other half of the Open Books and Records team, she let it slide.
Yes. And Ted had already gone up to New York, so he couldn't. We kept it on the down low. Till he actually found out. I don't know, Barry told him or something. And I tried to get him actually to do a tape recording saying, I'm having my lawyer cease and desist you. How dare you use Ted Godfrey's name for a silly band? Everyone knows I'm psychedelic. I am psychedelic. But it never failed attempt to have humor.
Right. Well, Ted had a thing, if I remember correctly, about, I don't know if this was actually a policy of his, but he would not, did not, could not play music, sing, be in a band ever. That just was not going to happen. And I remember once somebody coaxed him into picking up a guitar to be part of the Velvet Underground guitar army for an event at Open Books and Records. And
Nice.
he did it under extreme duress, if I recall correctly. So doubly funny to have a band named after him.
Yes, yes. Ted actually one time, we actually worked on this, but it never got too far. One day I walked in, he was like, Milo, I had this brilliant idea for the Gay Cowboys in Bondage. You know how the Clash have 1977? You should write lyrics 1984 and just do it in the same vein as 1977. And I gave it a good try, but it didn't go anywhere. But it was the only time like he actually like made a comment or something, except for, when are you bringing more cassettes?
Right, that's it. I think his genius was always more on the business side of things, which was
Yes.
the exact opposite of your genius.
Well, yeah, I wish you know, people always say it was the timing, and it seemed like in the 90s, the same thing that every one of us were doing, all of a sudden was radio play and getting all the hoopla. But, you know, you never do if, could, would, or should, you know.
Yeah, you just
it was a great experience. It was a chance for me to just write and to say that I have, well, look, even now you're releasing this stuff, that it's like without giving myself a fat head or an ego, it's weird that a local band from Florida that, you know, didn't even have its own amps, Pete played my guitar, and so forth, is kind of like in pop culture, is kind of like somewhere and somehow still in some conversation. I think that's just incredible. I don't think it's fame. I think it's just an ode to Florida, you know, to South Florida. That's, you know.
Yeah, and the great talents and personalities that we had, you know, and it really is remarkable considering just how isolated of a place it was and how, generally speaking, culturally backwards it was. We still did it. And here we are 40 years later, 40 years later.
Yeah, it's, 40 years later. I mean, but, you know, bands, was it Cats on Holiday, went up to New York and they got things going there, and the Reactions went up to New York, and Charlie Pickett, of course, you know, really went far and toured and got signed to labels that actually were nationally distributed, not, you know, indie DIYs. Yeah, I'm very proud that I was in a band at that time. I'm very glad that the bands gave me an opportunity to meet the people I was a fan of and become friends and not just a fan. That the conversation wasn't, oh, I love your music, but talking about friends things and what friendships are when you talk. You know, like you and I, and before this interview, you know, we were talking about Harry and we were talking about Vancouver. You know, it's it really is the experience that I love that I had, but I don't think it's my calling card, you know. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. You gotta move on and realize that if you don't want to be a rock star, you're not going to be a rock star. And you're going to enjoy being a father, enjoy being, have a business, enjoy your friends and your family and your community.
Exactly. As long as you enjoy, because life is to live.
Life is to live.
That's it. Well, cool. I'm going to do one last product roundup here. Remind everybody the capitalistic impetus for our entire conversation here, which is, of course, the official reissue of the Gay Cowboys in Bondage complete discography, CD, the cassette, each one lovingly handmade by an honest-to-God industry mogul, Malcolm Tent. I print them out, I fold them up, I cut them, I assemble them, I stuff them into the cases. You get the personal touch with TPOS product. If you want it, they're available. Look on Discogs, look on eBay, look on Bandcamp, look for TPOS. Contact me directly, Malcolm Tent. There's my PayPal address, mt@malcolmtent.net. Cold hard cash is always an option. Grab yourself several rolls of quarters or a neat little stack of bills, bundle them up nice and neat, tie them up, put them in a shoebox, and mail to P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470. And you will have your horizons expanded by the Gay Cowboys in Bondage, baby, because it's got to happen. Mike, do you have any words to say in parting to our frantic fans, loyal listeners, and vibratory viewers?
Bow to Mr. Tent, because he did more work on that project than we ever did on anything that we ever put out ourselves or with Sublabs. And I hope everyone enjoys the music. I hope that you feel the angst and the circumstances we dealt with Reagan and with, you know, they all had a purpose, and they were all tongue-in-cheek, and they were all trying to just take a shot at someone, maybe without them fully knowing someone's taking a shot at them.
Right on. I would say mission accomplished. So yay, bravo. Mike, I want to thank you so much for doing these interviews, and go forth, conquer, persevere north of the border.
Thank you, sir. It's a beautiful 18 degrees Celsius, which is about 65. Here we call that short sleeves and shorts.
Right on. Whereas I'm here in Connecticut wearing my sweatshirt and my warm jammies and 2 pair of socks. Go figure.
Well, I want to thank you, Malcolm. I appreciate that you're keeping music basically 40 years ago produced and put out alive. I don't think music ever becomes irrelevant. And thank you. Appreciate your work and effort, sir.
The pleasure is all mine, and thank you for making it happen. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. As always, I invite you all to check out my YouTube channel, where we have plenty more shoot interviews with musical luminaries from Connecticut and Florida and all over this dadgum planet of ours. And of course, my website, malcolmtent.net, a clearinghouse of information about me. So until we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.